Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Got a few different things I want to talk about in this one. The first one is Vortex, the new Gaspar Noé film about a elderly couple suffering from dementia. And if you don't know, Gaspar Noé, he directed Irreversible, I Stand Alone, Into the Void, and my personal favorite from him, Climax. I'm a big fan of his movies, but they're very divisive. But this one, I think maybe not so much. This one stars Dario Argento, the famous Italian horror director, and it's got some of the typical Noé trademarks. Like it's got his long takes, it's got split screen, like in Lux Eterna, which basically the entire film is in split screen. And there's a very unusual use of it at the end that I won't spoil because it's sort of a spoiler, but it's a very, very interesting use of split screen that I've never seen before. It's got his distinctive credit style. It's got the cuts he does where there's just like a quick black screen in between shots, kind of mimicking a blink type is kind of how I look at it. And it's got the multiple aspect ratios that he uses, but there's also many different things in here that are not his typical type of stuff. Like it's not super intense or violent. There's no crazy strobing. There's no wild camera moves like in Enter the Void or Irreversible. There's not tons of neon, no intense soundtrack. There's not surreal aspects of it. I mean, maybe a little bit could be looked at that way, but in general, it's a very realistic film. It's also more slow-paced than his usual stuff. It's very quiet, subdued film in general. It's more emotional and intimate and heartfelt than his usual stuff and less formalist and cerebral, I would say. And the director had a near-death experience before this, so that kind of might explain that. And this is also his longest film at nearly 2.5 hours. So it's not one of my favorites from him, but still a very, very good effort. And in some ways, it is his best. I would say it's worth watching even if you aren't a huge fan of his, since it is quite different than his usual stuff. Next one I want to talk about is Mad God, and let me tell you, this movie is just nuts. It's a stop-motion animation from Phil Tippett, who is just a legend in the special effects industry. He worked on original Star Wars trilogy, RoboCop, Jurassic Park, and he started working on this film 30 years ago. It's been his, passion project that I think he had to stop working on it for like a decade or so, and it's one of those things that just takes forever to get made. And this is a pretty unique film. I can't really think of films too specifically like it. I mean, there's definitely some influences, and I've seen some people kind of compare it to like Jan Svankmajer or David Lynch, specifically Eraserhead. I can kind of see that, but it's definitely its own thing. And I saw some people online also mention music videos from the band Tool, which I can see that. But it's still a very singular film. There's no dialogue in it, besides just kind of weird gibberish the characters speak sometime. No narration, just an opening text and a Bible quote. And man, this is just such an unsettling, gross, violent, bleak film. And I mean, this is one of the grossest films I've ever seen. I don't consider myself easily grossed out necessarily. I've seen all sorts of gory, violent stuff, but man, this movie, there's just so much stuff with like bodily fluids and stuff like that. It was hard for me to watch in parts. And, it's also a pretty serious film. There's not really any humor or light moments in it. It's got a unique visual style for sure. Also not the quickest paced film. There's freakish body horror characters throughout, and it gets pretty trippy at the end. Pretty impressive film on a technical level. It looks like a ton of effort must have went into this. And the animation is smoother than most stop motion. It doesn't have that kind of choppy look that a lot of stop motion has. I saw a New York Times article on this that said it was plotless. It's definitely not a plotless film. This has one. It's just not a straightforward film or a straightforward plot. And this is definitely one of those movies that sticks with you for a while. I was definitely thinking about it and just trying to get some of that gross imagery out of my head. And it begs for lots of analysis just because there's so much ambiguity and stuff in there that could be seen as metaphorical. But unfortunately, it's not really the kind of film that at least that I want to rewatch because of how gross it is. Also had a lot of 2001: A Space Odyssey references, which I loved. But I like this film, but this is like the definition of a divisive, not for everyone film. So if at all the idea of a super gross, bleak, depressing film scares you off, do not watch this. Moving on, we have the new Wes Anderson Asteroid City, which I saw in theaters. This, in my opinion, it's his weirdest and his most meta film. It also has his most experimentation with aspect ratio, which, he did some of that in Grand Budapest Hotel. But this, it changes even within a single scene, shot to shot, the aspect ratio will change. And the effect is even greater with so much mixing of color and black and white. And I would say this is my favorite from Wes Anderson since Grand Budapest Hotel. But I didn't love it as much as like my all-time favorites from him, like Grand Budapest or Royal Tenenbaums. And as usual with Wes Anderson, this looks great. And it might even be his best film on a pure visual level. And it's also one of his films with the most emotion and heart. And, I loved seeing some new actors work with Anderson. Obviously, he's got his normal stable of people that he brings back. And, in this one, it's got, your Jason Schwartzmans and whatnot. But it's also got some new people like Steve Carell and Tom Hanks and Bryan Cranston that it was fun seeing in Wes Anderson. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this for those who like Wes Anderson. I don't think this is going to convince you if you don't like him. I don't think this is going to be the one that converts you. Moving on, we have the film Broker, which is from director Hirokazu Koreeda, who did Shoplifters and The Truth. And he actually already has a more recent film than this. Broker came out in 2022 and Monster came out in 2023 this summer. But I don't believe that's available for English language viewers yet. And so Koreeda is a Japanese director, but he's been kind of filming stuff recently outside of Japan. Like The Truth was French, and this is a Korean film with in the Korean language, full Korean cast, and I think most of the crew, I believe, is Korean as well, like the cinematographer and composer. And it stars Song Kang-ho, of course, from Parasite, and he won the Best Actor at Cannes for this. And this is about two men who sell babies that were left at a so-called baby box on the black adoption market. And it's also about a young mother. And it's not as depressing as you might think, given the subject matter. And, it has a good amount of levity and humor. Nothing that'll make you burst out into laughter, but some humor nonetheless. It doesn't feel exploitative or melodramatic, which you might think given the plot line, but isn't that surprising given the director. It's got some very good acting, very good, subtle, naturalistic acting, well-written and interesting characters. Just overall, a very thoughtful, intimate, delicate film that is never preachy or condescending or judgy, again, as you might think, given the plot. The two men who are the baby brokers are never presented as just evil. It's a simple premise to this film, but it's complex and layered thematically. It's not slow, but it takes time. It takes its time, and it gives the characters rooms to be developed. It's, I would say, similar to Shoplifters and The Truth in terms of tone and quality. And it's similar to Shoplifters in that it's about a makeshift found family kind of situation. And as usual with Koreeda, the presentation is subdued and not stylized. But yeah, definitely recommended, especially if you like his previous films. And then the final film we'll talk about here is Aftersun, which came out quite a while ago. But it's a very solid film, especially as the debut from the director-writer Charlotte Wells. It's got great acting. Pleasantly surprised that a subtle performance like the lead Paul Mescal's got the Oscar nomination. Usually a more showy type things are where you stereotypically get the Oscar nominations. And especially considering this was a film that only got one Oscar nomination and wasn't big budget or anything like that. So very happy to see that get in. And it's got a great performance from the child actress who plays his daughter as well. The film's, it's kind of an interesting, cryptic examination of mental illness. It's got some interesting stylistic stuff. It's mainly pretty straightforward and not flashy, but it's got a few interludes in like a strobing rave-like environment that are more stylish and seem to be metaphorical. But the rest of the film is very very understated, but given that it still has some very effective cinematography. And this definitely is not for everyone, given how ambiguous and, like I said, understated it is, and given the melancholic vibes, like it's about mental illness and stuff like that. But still a very good movie that went under the radar despite getting nominated for the Oscar. I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it. But that'll be it. I'll just give a quick update on my channel. I'm still working away at Soviet cinema, doing comedies for now. I'm pretty close to watching all the ones that I want to for research for that. So yeah, working on that, and then Hungarian animation. I am eventually working towards a beginner's guide to Hungarian animation, and I might do some videos on individual animators as well, like I did for Marcel Yankovic. And also, I kind of want to do some more videos on individual Soviet animators. And then I'm also doing a video on the films of John Huston, who had a very interesting career, went all the way from the 40s to the 80s, and I'm about at the 70s in his filmography. I've been going through and watching not every single one of his films, but the important ones. But yeah, I think that'll be a pretty interesting one as well. But yeah, looks like that will be it for this video. So thank you for watching.